Right, okay, so I hope you had a go at balancing the equation, even if you found it a little bit hard. I think it's a good practice. So I'm going to just quickly talk you through how you write the correct answer. So the first thing, as we agreed, we're going to balance carbons. So I can see that on this side I've got 6 carbons and I only have 1 in CO2. So remember, if you have no number next to a letter, it means there is 1 of them. So in order to balance that, all I need to do is put 6 in front of CO2. So that means I've got 6 carbons on this side in glucose, and I have 6 lots of 1, which is 6 carbons on the other side. So that's carbons sorted. So then the next job is to work out number of hydrogens. Actually, I kind of had an answer there already for those of you who are paying attention. So on this side at the moment I've got 12 hydrogens and I've got only 2 in water on the other side. So all I need to do to balance it is to put 6 in front of H2O, because that would mean I've got 12 hydrogen atoms now on the other side, and there's 12 in the glucose. So that's both carbons and hydrogens now have been balanced. So the last job I'm going to do is to balance oxygens. So at the moment I've got 2 oxygens here, I've got 6 in the glucose, I've got 6 multiplied by 2, which is 12 on this side, and another 6 in the water. So again, you remember, it's 6 lots of 1, right? So it's not 12 like it was for hydrogens, it's just 6 oxygens. So you can see that I've got 6 here and 6 here, so that's already balanced, so don't worry about that one. So all I need to do is do this one last step. So I've got 12 oxygens in carbon dioxide, and I only have 2. So to make it balanced, I just need to put 6. So 6 multiplied by 2, 12. So 12 and 12 equal, so we've got equal number, and again 6 and 6. So on both sides you have now 18 oxygens, which is the balanced equations. So that gives you the balanced equation for aerobic respiration. So when you have your assignment, by the way, also message to you guys, when you have your assignment and you're referring to aerobic respiration, make sure you're using balanced equation, so like that one, okay? So I usually suggest to students, have your, your brightest highlighter on your favorite color and put a little frame around it, because we're going to be coming back to that equation again and again and again. And so you need to be able to easily find it in your notes, and that will be useful. Okay, so this is your final equation for aerobic respiration. Alright, so before I move on, those of you watching on the video, you need to go onto VLE and find a document called Respiratory Organs Label. So you open that document up, and I'd like you to have a go at labeling as many structures of respiratory system as you possibly can without using books or phones or internet or anything like that. Just label as many as you possibly can. Okay? So we've already done it with my group here in class, and we're going to kind of start going through the answers. So make sure you pause the video and have a go at labeling before you carry on with the rest of this video. Okay, let's go ahead. Get myself a bit of space. And I'm not going to pick on any specific people, we're just going to go through the list and see what suggestions you have. Right, so number 1 on my list, what is that?
Nasal passage.
Right, so you could just say nose, that would have been fine as well. Right, so that could be nose, but if you want to sound a bit more scientific and a bit more technical, then you can say nasal cavity or nasal passage, the same thing. So nose or nasal cavity or passage. Right, perfect. Now, number 2 is actually technically not part of respiratory system, by the way, but it's just there on this diagram just to give you a bit of a context. So we might as well name it. So what's number 2? Mouth, okay. Now again, if I wanted to sound really scientific, how else could I say it? So this is nasal cavity, and this is
Oral cavity.
oral cavity. Okay.
Oral cavity.
So just put in brackets, so this is not technically a part of respiratory tract. It's just there on the diagram, just to, as I said, give you a bit of a context, because sometimes you do have some taking some air through your mouth as well. Alright, number 3. So this is sort of the back of your throat essentially, right? Anybody got any idea, or did you put anything down at all?
Larynx,
Right, so this will be more specifically pharynx, you're absolutely right. Okay, is that what you said?
Yes.
Perfect, amazing. Very, very few people know this particular term. So in essence, as I said, this refers to the back of your throat, but the technical term is pharynx, so P-H-A-R-Y-N-X. Right, so number 4, there's a little flap of tissue which you find even deeper in your throat. Any idea what that is?
The trachea?
Not quite. Something beginning with E. A technical term, but not sure. Some people know it, some people don't. It's not esophagus, because esophagus that would be part of
Your digestive
system. So it's definitely not that one.
I don't think it is, but is it the epiglottis?
Why do you think it's not? You're absolutely spot on. Amazing. So it's
Something else.
It's epiglottis. Right, moving on to number 5. Now, Kira, you kind of already said it. Just need to repeat one of the terms you already threw in the mix. Not that one, another one, something else. Larynx.
Larynx, okay.
You did say it as well. So it's larynx, yeah? So that's the bit where you get laryngitis, right? When you lose your voice, because that's inflammation of larynx. That's where your vocal cords are. Right, 5, number 6 we're moving on to. Already named it a couple of times, so just need to now place it in the correct spot. Go on, just a bit louder. Trachea. That's trachea.
I thought it was pointing to the rings.
Trachea. This is H, by the way. Just make sure right. Meter. So this is the trachea.
Do you want to often?
Right, number 7. Oh, but you've been really quiet. 7. Everybody knows. Promise you.
Lungs.
Lung. Okay, lung or lungs. Let me just put lung because it's pointing to one. Obviously, you've got 2 of them.
I was going to say the lining of the lungs.
But it just refers to the lung, otherwise you wouldn't have another label for a lung.
Yeah.
Right, then we are on to number 8. So you can see from the diagram that my number 6, which is trachea, if you follow with your eyes further down, it splits into 2 branches, and that's the term I'm next looking for. And when you get inflammation of it, this is a word you probably heard of as well. Right, so it's bronchitis, which is inflammation, but then the actual term would be bronchus. That would be one of them. Yeah, so let me just write this down first. Bronchus.
There's too many things that sound like.
So bronchus is singular, and then bronchi will be plural. Bronchi is plural. So you probably know by now that there are certain words in biology which don't follow the normal singular plural rule. So you don't just add an S. We came across a term like this in the beginning of today, do you remember still? So there was mitochondria, mitochondrion. So it wasn't just mitochondrias or something like that, right? So that term doesn't. So it sort of follows similar logic. So bronchus and bronchi. Right, and then number 9. So bronchus then branches into smaller things, and I already could hear like a bit of whispering going on there.
Bronchioles.
Bronchioles. Bronchioles. And then number 10.
Kept getting like the letters mixed around, but the alveoli.
Absolutely right. And I think Kira and Abby, I think I heard you kind of discussing alveoli. Was that right? Yeah, I think you mentioned it. Yeah. Alveoli.
Because I can picture the whole intricate process in my mind of whether oxygen.
Alveoli. So that's the term which came up in the assignment. Now, this is kind of similar Malaki, I'm afraid, with singular and plurals. Alveoli, any idea if that's plural or singular?
Is that singular? Plural.
And alveolus is on its own.
Yep, that's it, right? So then alveolus, olus will be singular. So you see, I almost wish I switched it this way, because can you see bronchus, alveolus, singular, right? Bronchi, alveoli, plural. So a lot of these terms come from Latin, so that's why sort of
It would be so much easier if it was the other way around. Because if it's
So
like
shall I write it that way around?
No, as in like if the actual meaning was.
Oh, I see.
Because
If you
plural
wouldn't remember the
being
music.
us, it's like
Okay.
us, and then singular being I.
Right.
That'd be so much easier.
Well, you have to sort of try to remember it the other way around. So us will be singular, yeah? And I will be plural. So switch it the other way around. Okay, so then the final structure, one more.
Diaphragm.
Diaphragm. Perfect.
So it was without the. No, I put the G in the wrong thing. So I knew there was a G in there somewhere.
Okay, so that sort of covers all the terminology. So try to remember those structures. So next time when I'm having a revision with you, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this diagram and we'll go around and what's this one called, what's that one called. So you have to sort of try to remember it without necessarily glancing and going straight for your notes. Okay? Right, so what we're doing next is we are looking at each structure in turn. So we're pretty much going from the top of the list to the bottom of the list, and we are looking at, what it looks like and what functions that structure performs and how the way it's structured helps it to perform its function better. Okay, so kind of the structure to function relationships. So we're going to start with nasal cavity. So let me just wipe it off, free up some space.
You know the bit that connects the nasal cavity to your pharynx? Is that called the nasopharynx?
You could, yes, but sometimes it just combines. So nasopharynx will be like a combination of the two. Yeah. So in some books you might have slightly different terminology where they're bunching certain structures together. Okay, so there's no problem with you following that pattern if you're using book as one of your sources and doing it slightly differently to how I'm doing it. Yeah. Okay, so nasal passage, nasal cavity. Yeah, nasal cavity. Let's go with that. So first of all, let's discuss functions. What do you need your nose for?
Breathe.
Okay, so when you say breathe, essentially you mean like let air in and out, right? So that's a good suggestion. Okay, let air in and out. But that's not it, right? I mean, that's the easy one you all can think of the bat. What about something a little bit more sophisticated, yeah?
Smell.
Smell, okay. Sense of smell. So my next question is then, what happens to the air as it's passing through your nose? And that might give you some ideas about whichever functions your nose is performing. What do you think is going
Things
on?
like particles in the air, because that's why you have
Right,
mucus in the nose.
absolutely. So you're filtering, filter the air. And by filtering the air, you're absolutely right. So you're getting rid of things like dust, but also you're getting rid of things like germs, all the viruses, bacteria, which you don't want to get all the way into your lungs. What else do you think happens to the air? Okay, we filter it. And what else?
Gets absorbed into the body.
Well, hold on, that wouldn't be absorbed into, would not in your nose, right? I mean, you have to wait until you get all the way to your alveoli for that to happen. Okay? Right, so let me give you a clue then. Alright, so let's say you go outside in winter and the air around you is pretty cold, right? We'll just say that. When you're breathing it in, does it feel cold in your lungs? No, not really, right? So what do you think is happening in your
It
nose?
warms the air.
It warms the air. And next time, it's not so much a problem in this country, but let's say you went on holiday somewhere nice and hot, right, Egypt. What do you think is going to be happening to the air in a really dry climate?
There's not much moisture in the air, so...
Right, absolutely. Because what you don't want to do, you need your lungs, and we're going to talk about it when we get to alveoli. The inside of the lungs need to be moist at all times. You cannot afford to get dry air, and for that dry air to reach your lungs and dry out the layers, the inside of alveoli. So therefore we also need to moisten the air. As I said, not much of a problem here. We have very high humidity, but that's not the case in all the different climates. So our body needs to be adapted for all sorts of circumstances. So it also needs to moisten the air. So these are the functions. So what is there in your nose which helps you to achieve these functions? And I'm specifically going to concentrate on the last three, right? Because sense of smell, well, that's really important, you know, that's fine, but it's not going to help us to achieve our aerobic respiration, right? It's not going to help us particularly to get the oxygen in and out of the bloodstream. Right, so here I'm going to start talking about some of the structures in your nose. And specifically, I'm going to look at microscopic structure of your nose. So I'm looking at your nose and inside of your nose, you know, with naked eye. I'm taking a tiny layer inside your nose and I'm sticking it under the microscope and I'm having a look what is there. And what I'm looking at is individual cells. Okay, so cells are going to look a bit like that. So let me just draw them first. Just give me a second.
That's why people that smell the tar builds up in those. That's why they always have like a cough that they can never get rid of. It's like tar builds up in mini hairs. Not hairs, but...
Okay, so it's going to be something like this. So this is your basement membrane. And on the surface of this basement membrane you have cells. So what I'm trying to draw is a lot of ovals. And you will have sort of little blobs inside each of these ovals. So the little blobs are going to be what? What do you think those represent? Nucleus, yeah, so nucleus of a cell. So this is a cell. And then some of these cells will have a little tiny projections of the cell membrane. So that's why I've drawn this kind of funny looking extensions here. So majority of these cells will have these projections, but then some cells, once in a while, they don't. So I'm going to highlight them in different colors. So I've got one cell like this right here at the beginning, which doesn't have a projection, and I've got another cell here, which again doesn't have a projection. So those special cells, which don't have projections, they're called goblet cells. A bit like Harry Potter and Goblet of Fire, right? And these are the cells which produce mucus. So they produce mucus. And then the rest of your cells will have projections. And those projections, I wonder if anybody knows what they're called, like a little projections of cell membrane. You find these sort of cells in other parts of your body where you need.
They call them microvilli.
I think you're on the right track, right? On the right track, because you have very similar cells in your small intestine, and they do have microvilli. But here in your nose, you have those projections called cilia. Anybody ever came across this word before? Cilia, or ciliated cells, meaning cells containing.
Are they similar to the ones in your throat?
Yeah, yeah. Cilia. So goblet cells are going to be producing this layer of mucus, and this layer of mucus is going to be sitting on the surface of those cells, like in a layer. I'm not going to draw it because it's going to make diagram really complicated. But imagine a layer of mucus sitting here on top of cilia. Next, I want you to have a go at giving me, I know you're probably not going to know the answer, but give me your best guess. How much mucus do you think your body, your respiratory system, produces in 24 hours? What would be your best guess? So mind you, if you've seen those test tubes, right, so the full test tube, it's not quite full, but let's say just over half of a test tube will be about 10 ml. Okay? So what would be your kind of gut feeling about how much mucus your body would be producing in 24 hours?
A healthy individual.
Well, I suppose it might change from person to person. We're talking about average. What would you say? Laura, do you have an idea? What do you give me?
50 or 60?
50 or 60 mil? Okay. Terry, what are you going to go for?
I was going to go in litres.
How much?
Like, I'm going to go with 2.4 litres.
2.4 liters. Wow, you're going all around. Okay. Kira, what about you?
I put 25 mils, but that was
About 25 mil.
Yeah, or a cup. For some reason,
Well, hold on. Cup is very different to 25
Yeah,
mil.
I know. I can't remember.
Cup would be something like 250.
Yeah, that's what I'm
mil,
not sure if I
probably.
saw the zero after.
Okay, Abby, what's your best guess? Where are you? So we're going sort of quite a big range here. Like 30 mil? Okay. Well, the actual answer is, and we're talking about on average, obviously, and then the person who's healthy and normal and just, breathing as normal and going around their normal everyday business. So you're producing around about 500 mil of mucus in 24 hours. So if you imagine just a normal drink bottle, which a lot of people carry with them, that's about 500 ml or half a liter. So about 500 milliliters produced in 24 hours. What do you think is going to be the purpose of having this mucus? What functions is mucus going to help us to fulfill? Go back to your list of functions. What is that going to be helping us to do?
Stop you getting germs.
Right, okay, so it's going to help us to filter the air, because essentially it'll be like a layer of glue, right? So anything landing onto this mucus, so it could be dust particles, viruses, bacteria, you name it, it's all going to get stuck onto this mucus. Which one other function, which is it will help us to fulfill, apart from filtering the air?
Letting the air in and out.
But not mucus. I mean, mucus itself is not going to help.
It keeps
That's
lungs
probably going to
moist.
hinder, if anything, right?
It keeps the lungs moist.
Moist, exactly, because mucus, in essence, is going to be mostly water. Okay, so make sure you take a little note of that. All right. So how do you link that structure to function? Which function do goblet cells and mucus help you to fulfill? To make sure you write it down as a 1 or 2 sentences. Okay, I'm not going to do it, so it's going to be your job to phrase it in the way you feel makes sense to you. Okay, so 500 ml in 24 hours, where is it all going? What do you think? Which way is it going to go? Is it going to go this way?
Will you sneeze it up, you cough
Or
it
is
up?
it cough it up? Okay, so you're walking about in your whole day and you're constantly dripping liquid. 24 hours a day, you're coming in. Overall, it's about half a liter. Imagine you would have a lot of tissues, really wet tissues around you all the time, which you're just carrying around. Does that happen if you're well? No.
Do you weigh it out?
Well, hold on. In order for us to weigh it out, you would have to get first to your bloodstream. So where does it go? So from your nose, where does it go? It's going to go to the back of your throat, and then what do you think is going to happen to it? Is it going to go into your lungs?
Go into your stomach.
Yes, it's not going to go into your lungs, it's going to go into your stomach. Right? Not very pleasant thought, maybe, but that's what's happening with all this mucus. So as you're walking around, and you don't even think about it, but from time to time you're a little swollen, right? You don't even notice that, but that's that tiny bit of mucus with all the trapped bacteria and viruses which has gone into your stomach. And in your stomach, what do you have there?
Acid.
Acid, absolutely right. So all of these bacteria and dust and viruses, they're all going to get dissolved and they're not going to harm you anymore, right? So in order for that mucus to end up in your stomach, that's why we need cilia. What do you think cilia is going to be doing? So with a layer of mucus sitting on top of cilia, what do you think cilia's job is?
It moves it along.
It moves it along, absolutely. So those projections work a little bit like waves which waft this mucus towards the back of your throat and towards your stomach. So
Like when you smoke over, they can become not working as well.
Absolutely. So when you're ill and when you have a cold, you're overproducing this mucus because your body is trying very hard to get rid of all this extra bacteria and viruses or virus, and therefore your cilia might not just be able to cope with this extra amount of mucus, and that's why you even walk around with tissues. Okay? But thankfully, cilia push it towards your stomach, otherwise all you'll be doing is walking around dripping mucus all the time. Not a pretty picture. Okay? So again, can I give you 1 minute just to explain what cilia is doing? Okay? So just write it down, explain the function of cilia. can I ask you one additional question? Which type of tissue do these cells belong to? Can you remember the types of tissue from somewhere you learned early on? So people who are watching on the video, I actually taught it very recently, types of tissue, so you should be fairly straightforward. So something which is lining the inside of one of your organs.